Hi, and we're back with our Bible study, Wandering in the Wilderness. Last time we saw the people request new gods, and Aaron create a golden calf for them. Meanwhile, up on the mountain, here's what's happening. This is from Exodus 32, verses 7 through 20. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have been corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.' I have seen these people," the Lord said to Moses, "and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. "O Lord," he said, "why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, 'It was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth'? Turn from your fierce anger. Relent and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, 'I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever.' Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of people shouting, he said to Moses, 'There's the sound of war in the camp.' Moses replied, 'It is not the sound of victory. It is not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear.' When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf they had made and burned it in the fire. Then he ground it into powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it."
All right, so we know what the people did, but we also didn't know until this part of chapter 32 how God and Moses reacted to it. So let's talk about God first. So we were just talking in yesterday's study that God for the Israelites might be perceived to be far off, not right there at their hands, not right at their touch. And so when there's some distance between them and God, you would think, okay, well, maybe God doesn't know everything that's going on. But clearly, God knows exactly what's going on. Even though he's up on the mountain with Moses, he knows what the people are up to and what they have been doing. So when he knows exactly what's going on, he has some thoughts about it, and he's going to tell Moses what he thinks. So he is clearly very angry. God is angry. And God even reverts to name calling. He said they are a stiff-necked people. But he sees and the people asking Aaron to create the golden calf and asking for gods that they can have close at hand and asking for gods where they could bring their offering and manipulate the things that they want in their time of worship, and they can have that distorted time of worship. God sees that the people have broken their covenant. They had received the promise. They had, God was taking them through the wilderness out of slavery into freedom towards the promised land. God was taking them on a journey and had made promises and had created a covenant. But the people in this very act have broken it. In chapters previous to this that Brian summarized for us yesterday, the people, when asked if they're going to follow, if they're going to hold up their end of it, said, "Yes, we will." More than once, they said, "Yes, we will do this. We will follow God." And we are thankful for God and for our freedom from slavery. But at this instance, they clearly did not. They have broken the covenant. They have their end of it is definitely broken. So what do we make of this? I think the first thing we can understand, so God is angry, But God is angry because they have committed the sin of idolatry. And that is a very serious sin. It's like hearing from all the people that they have completely rejected God. They're like, have they forgotten everything? Have they forgotten what it was like to be slaves in Egypt? Have they forgotten how they got away from Pharaoh? Have they forgotten that when they needed water, God provided it? When they needed food, God provided manna. When they begged for meat, God provided quail. And that God has been guiding them as a pillar of cloud by day and as a pillar of fire by night. They have been guided on this journey, and yet God feels forgotten and abandoned and now replaced. The sin of idolatry is a major one. So God is sharing God's anger at this point.
Yeah. God is furious. But look at how Moses reacts. I find it interesting that Moses, who has been frustrated with these people for so long, he's been frustrated because they griped about the water. He's been frustrated because they griped about the manna. They griped about the quail. He has been really upset with these folks, and he's shown it to them. But he immediately here, rather than saying, yeah, I can't leave you alone for 5 minutes, immediately he steps in and defends the people. Immediately he steps in to try to placate God's anger. First thing he says is, God, listen, you could destroy these people, but then what would everyone else say? All these other nations who are watching, what would the Egyptians say? This God worked so hard. He sent all these plagues to get these people out of here, and he takes them out to the desert and destroys them? No, God. God, think of your reputation. Your name needs to be mighty throughout the earth. And this is the people to do it. It says, this is the people. You have to be gracious to them so that the world will see that you will be gracious to the world. But then he also says this. He says, remember, it wasn't just to this people that you made a promise. It wasn't just to me you made a promise. You made a promise a long time ago to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It goes back a long way. Even if this people can't keep a promise, even if this people won't hold up their end of the bargain, you are God, and you can still keep your promise, not just to this people, but to our ancestors. Now, this seems to satisfy God. But then Moses starts down the mountain, starts down with his assistant, Joshua. And as he comes down, he hears what's going on off in the distance. And then he sees it. And he's had this time to let that anger build up. And he's holding the words written by God in his hands. And he's so mad that in actually seeing it, he holds them up and he throws them down and destroys it. Now we can see that maybe as, in some sense, this act of anger. He loses control of himself. But we can also see it as this, that the covenant has really already been broken. That what the people have done has made those tablets written by God meaningless. And so that covenant, the tablets that are now laying there in pieces actually symbolize what the people have done. Moses doesn't just do that. Moses takes that calf and he grinds it into a fine powder and he mixes it with the water and he makes everyone drink it as if to say, this is the bitter taste that's going to be in your mouth from your sin. This is the awfulness that you're going to have to live with because of what you did.
So it's interesting to see how God gets angry first, but Moses doesn't go there with him yet. Moses' anger does not come out at first. Moses immediately goes to defend the people and to try to plead for them before God. But then upon the part that struck me this week as I was looking at this is that, well, how can God not be angry there? Or Moses is not angry there, but then he comes down the mountain and suddenly he's angry. Did he not believe it when God told him? Or is it one of those, he heard it, he's like, yeah, they're capable of that, but please God, he begs for them. But then as he walks down the mountain and he thinks about it more, and then he actually sees it. I think the actual seeing of it was made Moses angry. But maybe Moses is saying a couple things in as he shares with the people that he realizes that the covenant has been broken. The first is, the tablets, which, God is trying to create covenant with them, that had all the law, that had all the instruction, clearly had been broken, so it needed to be broken physically and in front of them. So where there is brokenness, Moses then turns to the calf. The calf represented their major sin of idolatry, that they had replaced God with this item, this thing. And so Moses first off knew he had to destroy this. But my thought is, as I believe Moses felt the need to destroy it because he needed the people to see that the idolatry had to end, and that he needed to pave the way that this cannot go on any longer. You've broken this. You've hurt God. You've forgotten God. There is incredible brokenness here, but it cannot continue. Sometimes we have to have a place of realizing when we have reached a broken place. Is it in a relationship? Is it in our relationship with God? Is it the way in which we interact with the world? Is it something in us, something in someone else that we're close to? When we find incredible brokenness, maybe we can have Moses' insight to know where that brokenness part of it has to be destroyed so it cannot continue. For the Israelites here wandering in the wilderness, as they're struggling to understand God and struggling to understand their time and understanding this time of wilderness and following God and just trying to understand what they're going through. They reached out and needed to make a golden calf. And Moses knew better. Moses knew that could not continue, and that that part of the brokenness had to be destroyed so it couldn't grow. What in us needs to be stopped so it cannot grow, so that we might have a closer relationship with God? Something for you to ponder and think and pray about today.